It's such an honor to be here, and I feel so humbled to get to share space with such incredible, wholehearted humans and to learn from. So yeah, this is such a privilege. So thank y'all so much for being here and sharing this time with us. I'm going to give you a bit of my story, and I'm Southern, so I'm going to try to talk really fast because there's a lot to say, and I don't usually talk fast. So this will be interesting. So backstory, I don't know exactly how to work. So that is me. When I was a little girl, I grew up on a farm in the middle of nowhere in South Louisiana and had a really great life, and I thought other people's lives were happy and happy-go-lucky like mine, and I thought that they were living their best lives, and I never went a day without knowing how loved I am, which now I realize like what a privilege and how kind of set apart that is, you know. 2 older brothers. When I was a senior in high school, I pulled out in front of an ambulance, and I was hit on my car door. He was going 65, and I broke 3 ribs, and they punctured my lungs, and my lungs collapsed, and my spleen ruptured, and I broke C1 and C2. And the ambulance driver saved my life. If you're going to get hit by something, it's a good one. And I mean, I had apparently a 5% chance to live and a 1% chance to walk. I was on life support. I was in the hospital about a month. After I was stable, they took bone from my hip and fused it into my neck and used wire, because that's what they used to do back in the day. I'm a little bit older. And so, I mean, this is the only photo I have from this time. Oh my God, I was so embarrassed. This was like a week after I got out of the hospital, and they had postponed our homecoming parade. Anyway, long story short, I left there with a big-ass neck brace for like 6 months, but looking at me, besides that, you wouldn't know anything had happened. All my scars were hidden by clothing and my hair, and I was super lucky. I had health and youth on my side, and I kind of went back to life as normal, like nothing had happened, you know? And I graduated on time. I went to college. I was a terrible student, but I had so much fun. And I graduated somehow by Santa Jesus miracle. And I moved to Nashville. I was offered a job, and I met my first boyfriend. And my parents were like super stoked he was a boy because they were convinced I love girls, which I'm like, I wish, but I like boys. And we were idiots and young and got married 10 months later. And we were just excited about our lives. We were excited to get it started. And we had bought our little house, and I was touring with him on the road. And probably about a year into our marriage, one day I was walking in front of a Starbucks, as you do, and all of a sudden I felt this pain shoot up my head. And I was like, did somebody just shoot me, or did I get struck by lightning? Like, what the fook is happening? Actually, I'm going to say the word. I thought no one loved it more than me until I met Jillian. I'm like, oh my God, I love her. Anyway, so I thought someone had like shot me, truly. I fell to the ground, blacked out, felt like I was going to throw up. I was left with this residual migraine pain. Started going to doctors, one after another, and every time they would have me do an MRI, there would be this black spot that would come back on my film, and they'd be like, oh, that's just the magnet from the machine interacting with the wire from your fusion. Everything around it looks fine. I started a bazillion therapies. Nothing helped. And then they started me on narcotics, and truly, like, I was in so much pain. I was so desperate to not hurt all the time that I took everything they recommended and more and more and more. And I somehow, by the grace of Santa Jesus, I didn't abuse it, but I took everything they recommended. Like, I was just desperate. I started spending pretty much every second of my life in my bed, and I think I handled it the way you would think with like acute pain, which is you need to rest, and then once you feel better, you'll start moving. But like, I never woke up and felt better. My pain just continued to get worse and worse and worse. And it felt so hopeless and so dark. And of course, narcotics were not helping my cause with just my mental space. And I can't even imagine how hard that would have been for a partner, right? Like, I was one way when we got married, and then a year in, I can't get out of bed, and I'm on all these drugs. So after about 4 or 5 years, I showed my films to a doctor. I mean, I'd seen probably 11 or 12 doctors by this point. And he was like, I can't tell you what's going on until I see what's under that black spot. And in my head, I'm like, well, duh. Why has anyone ever asked to see what's under that black spot? But it never even dawned on me to ask that, you know? And basically, a $50 x-ray showed this. One of the wires from my spinal cord fusion had broken and pierced my brainstem. And I'm the only one that's ever had that happen. I should not be walking. They said, you should be paralyzed. If we don't get it out, you will be paralyzed. Surgery itself, super high risk of paralysis. So scared shitless, I dug in, started reading Harry Potter because I couldn't deal with life. And I'm like, I need to hang with my friends Harry, Hermione, and Ron and pretend like life is not happening because this shit is terrible. And literally 2 weeks later, my dad, y'all, look at that human. Oh my God, is he not the cutest thing you've ever seen in your life? My dad, who I called Papa, he had told my mom and my godfather he was going to come see me and tell me that he would sell our farm so I could have the surgery because insurance wouldn't cover it. So it's a pre-existing injury. And the night before he was on his way to see me, he had a freak accident and ended up falling down a flight of stairs and ended up passing from brain damage. So it was just this massive loss, not just for me, but for everyone in our community. My dad, his eyes, like, shine. I wish y'all could have known him, because I swear your life would have been better for it. He had this magnetism about him. You just wanted to be in his presence because it felt so good, right? And every time he'd leave me in my brother's presence when we were children, he'd say, I love you so much. Remember your manners and always look out for the little guy. And that's what he did. That's the way he lived his life. And so weeks start passing, and it was just the darkest. I remember just like pinching myself and drawing blood because I'm like, I have to be living in a nightmare. I'm going to wake up. I'm going to wake up. I'm going to wake up. I start getting these letters in the mail, and people would be like, guys, update, we had like very little money. I grew up on a farm. He plowed our garden with a mule. Like, we were not wealthy. But people started sending me checks, and they'd be like, your dad sent me on my senior trip. Your dad fixed my roof. Your dad sent me to school. Your dad pays my rent. And so this crazy amount of money was raised because my dad had loved people so well. And it was just this like beautiful thing in the midst of such a dark, heartbreaking season. It felt like such a privilege to have been this man's daughter, you know? So the good thing about having a freak medical accident is doctors are like chomping at the bit to work on you because they get off on that shit. They love it when you're a freak. And so I was pursued by all these doctors, and I ended up choosing the Mayo Clinic, and this top neurologist, top orthopedic surgeon did it together. It was like a 12-hour surgery. They went in, they were hoping that it would help with my pain, but they're like, if we don't remove this, you won't be walking. That's why we're doing it. Hopefully it'll help your pain too. So this is the wire they removed from my frickin' brainstem. Dear God, that was in my brainstem. Update, that's crazy. And, you know, they took bone from my other hip. They fused it this time with 8 titanium screws. And I left walking. I left with another neck brace. Yeah, thank you. Yeah. But I ended up getting really intensive nerve damage. So the best way I know how to describe it is one time my right foot was standing in fire ants, and my brother yelled at me to move, and because I didn't realize it, and I had tons and tons and tons and tons of fire ants up my right leg, and I didn't notice it because that's what it always feels like. My right side just feels like it's on fire all the time, and so I actually went back to living in my bed, and I was on even more drugs at this point, and it felt even more hopeless because I knew this wasn't like a passing thing. I knew this was my new forever. And I handled it horribly and went back to my bed, and I ended up catching this horrible bacterial infection called C. diff. Does anyone know what that is? I will spare you the details, but it includes shitting my pants about 800 billion times. It was a nightmare, and I literally hit such a wall. I mean, I was so sick I couldn't take care of myself anymore, and my husband was on tour, and I could tell my marriage was coming to an end, which honestly I don't blame him. And I hit a wall. My family had to come get me. Couldn't take care of myself anymore. I kept ending up in the emergency room. I moved home. I was a complete nightmare. I'd stopped sleeping. I couldn't think straight. I went 20-something days without sleeping, and I felt like the biggest nightmare. And I'd never felt such shame in all my life. And I just kept thinking about my papa and feeling shame. And after being there about 2 weeks, they had talked to me about sending me away to get help. And honestly, that scared the shit out of me. And I was like, you are not sending me away. And so the next day, I started weaning myself off of all the drugs because out of fear, truly just out of fear. And it took me about 4 months. And at the very beginning, I remember making a list. It was the crazy, I had to relearn how to live. I'd been in my bed for almost 7 years at that point, watching every reality show that ever was. I told Jillian I used to watch Biggest Loser all the time. So that was amazing to meet her. Anyway, I made this list. I remember it was like 8 o'clock. Get out of bed, make the bed, not allowed to get back into it until it's dark outside. 8:05, brush your teeth. I mean, like, I literally had to relearn how to live step by step, and I would scratch off the most basic shit you've ever heard of because I needed that. I needed the, like, okay, I brushed my teeth. Okay, I took a shower. I ate. Probably about 2 weeks into that, I remember having this image of myself. My mind started feeling like me again. My body was still really, really, really hard. But my mind started feeling like me, and I made myself a second list. And this list was all the things I'd love to do before I had pain. I was like, you love sunsets. You love wildflowers. You love hosting people. You love people. I didn't remember. I didn't care about anything at the time, literally nothing. I felt numb and black inside. And I think so often when you're suffering and in pain, you think, I'll do this action once the good emotion comes. And I had to realize, like, the emotion wasn't going to come. I had to do the action first. So I started making myself get up, and I'd go make myself watch the sunset each day. And all of a sudden, and I'd make myself speak out loud the beautiful things I saw, even if I felt nothing. And slowly but surely, the emotion started coming, and I started feeling awe again. Because when we numb the hard things, we numb all the good too. And so by trying to numb my pain for so many years, I numbed every good thing. And so I had not watched a sunset or given a shit about it for years and years. And all of a sudden, I remember thinking to myself in 2nd grade when I got glasses for the first time, and I walked out of the doctor's office and was like, Mom, look at the sky. And just died, you know, and like, look at the sky, like, look at the clouds and look at the birds and look at the leaves. And that's how I started feeling again. I was just in awe. And I remember hearing this quote that the deeper sorrow carves into your being, the more joy you can contain. And I was like, that's going to be my story. I'm going to get to experience joy on the deepest level because of this pain. And for so long, I had led with my pain. Like, I was defined by pain. I lived in that lane, and I was parked there as a victim. And all of a sudden, I started changing the narrative. And it was through lots of counseling, which, update, if you don't have a counselor, get one. Most important thing ever. But I was like, up to that point, because you teach people how to see you, I had led with pain. And so when people would see me, they'd be like, how are you doing? How are you feeling? And in some gross, backwards, subconscious way, I found so much comfort in their sympathy because it justified me living in my bed and being a horrible wife and not working and being a terrible friend and not being dependable. And all of a sudden, I was like, no, I want people, when they leave me, I want them to feel seen, and I want them to feel cared for, and I want them to know how special they are, not sorry for me, you know? And so this pain became a piece of me, but not who I was anymore. And a lot of other hard things happened. My husband did end up leaving, and thank God I was off of all the drugs by that point, because that would have not been good. Oh, God. But, I started making myself get up. And I had to relearn how to live, and I had to get like this new lens to actually see people and see the world. And I think that's the beautiful thing about pain, is it gives you eyes. Like, now, I love the Me Too movement in so many ways because, one, pain is universal. Everyone has had pain, everyone has suffered, everyone has traumas. And now I can actually see people. I don't look at people now and think that they are just happy like me. Like, when I see joyful people, I think, oh my God, they've been through so much and they're doing such hard work. They're doing such hard work. And, I love the idea that, like, pain is this thing it's the hardest thing in my life, period. It's hard. Like, my pain is actually, it's worse now than it was when I lived in my bed, and it's gotten worse every year for like 13 years, and I wouldn't wish it on anyone. It's the hardest thing in my life. It makes For the longest time, I didn't do anything that I knew would make my pain worse. And then all of a sudden, I was like, yeah, I'm going to feel worse. These are just some random jobs that I did. I started like hosting people, and I started speaking, and this is just a collage of different things that I've done that I had so much fun doing. I'm like, yeah, like if I dance, I'm going to hurt worse. If I travel, I'm going to hurt worse. Everything comes at a cost. But my option is like lay in bed and do nothing, or like get your ass up and live life and experience it to the fullest, you know? And so what I want to say to you today, this is one of my favorite things. I don't know if y'all have heard of kintsukuroi, and I'm sure I just said that wrong with my southern accent. But it's this idea, it's this ancient Japanese practice. And when this pottery would break, they would bring it to a master, and the master would take all the pieces and he'd put them back together and he'd seal it with gold. And all of a sudden, this broken piece was more valuable and more beautiful because it had been broken. And I was like, oh, like that's gonna be my story. That is my story. I wish my dad was here, you know. I wish I didn't hurt. I wish I didn't have to throw up last night from pain. No one grows up and is like, I can't wait to get a divorce one day, you know. But I know that this pain is the thing that has made me so much better and so much softer and more beautiful and more whole. And it's been this vehicle to connect with others who are suffering. So I wish I could walk around and look every single one of you beautiful women and 4 men in the eye. And y'all are welcome too. We're so glad you're here. There is so much hope for you. You are so loved. And whatever broken, fucked up, painful thing that you have lived through or are living through right now, this is not the end of your story. And this can be the thing that makes you so much better and so much softer and so much more beautiful. That's it. Thank y'all so much.